Tonight, we welcome Ontario Progressive Conservative Party leader Doug Ford, Ontario New Democratic Party leader Andrea Horwath, Ontario Liberal Party leader Stephen Del Duca, and Green Party of Ontario leader Mike Schreiner.
We think it's important because the numbers are still as low as they are. Roughly 40 to 45% of those kids have gotten both doses. We think it's a way to boost confidence and make sure people understand we want our schools to stay open.
Oh, just a few more media questions. Sorry.
You plan to address the housing crisis by building 100,000 new affordable units. So how does this help people trying to buy into the housing market with the record level inflation that we're seeing?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, the Ontario Greens put forward a very comprehensive housing affordability strategy last June.
Would you have appointed Kieran Moore if you knew that he was direct ties with Pfizer?
Guys, he's done taking questions.
Mr. Ford, why'd you flip-flop on the vaccine? Why'd you flip-flop on the vaccine passport?
I'm Tamara Ugolini with Rebel News, and I'm here at the TVO Studio on Yonge Street in Toronto. As you can see behind me, there's some protesters gathering. So we're here to cover the Ontario leaders' debates happening tonight, their last debate before they seek election or re-election as of June 2nd, again here in Ontario. So I'm at the TVO headquarters, like I said. TVO stands for TV Ontario. It's a Midtown Toronto studio, publicly funded television network and media organization, serving, of course, the province of Ontario. Now we'll hear from Ontario PC Progressive Conservative leader Doug Ford, seeking re-election for the next 4 years, the Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca, leader of the NDP Andrea Horwath, and the leader of the Green Party Mike Schreiner.
Hey folks, do you know your rights? Well, you should know your rights, especially these days. That's why I'm urging you to go to the website freedompassport.ca, freedompassport.ca. They are selling a little booklet that resembles a Canadian passport, but instead of travel documents, it is pages and pages of what your rights are that are between those covers. It's the best $19.95 you'll ever spend. Once again, please go to freedompassport.ca and know your rights.
My colleague Lincoln Jay and I will be listening in on the debate from a screen with the rest of the media party in a separate room from where the leaders will be debating, and we will be at the media scrum thereafter to pose some questions, so stay tuned.
Mr. Ford wants to act like he can skate right past that.
Okay,
Like COVID never happened and the affordability crisis
Let's
doesn't
give him a
exist.
chance to respond. Mr. Ford.
Well, Mr. Del Duca, I just want to remind you, under yourself and the former Premier Kathleen Wynne, you destroyed this province.
Ms. Horwath has amended her platform 3 times now to keep up with us on housing.
Ms. Horwath.
Well, again, the very most important thing is to get a chance to actually relieve the pressure on people and families. And so there's no doubt that Mr. Ford's cuts are only going to hurt more. We need to elect a government that's going to take care of the affordability of life here.
Doug Ford seems to not understand that's the job that he ran for 4 years ago. You don't just get to be premier when it's parades and sunshine. When you sign up for this job, when you take on this responsibility, yes, you have the job and the responsibility in good times, but also...
Mr. Del Duca, just a quick question. Today you made the affordability pledge and you simultaneously criticized Doug Ford for favoring big box stores, but then in October of 2021, you you called for the closure of restaurants and gyms. So how do you reconcile those two seemingly in discrepancies?
Well, I don't look at them as a discrepancy. I think it's important in a public health crisis to listen to the best medical advice and science. But I also think it's important to make sure you are there to provide direct and quick and easy to access financial support for small business entrepreneurs, including restaurants, gym owners, and others. That's why in the Ontario Liberal plan, for those businesses, small businesses hardest hit during this pandemic, many restaurants, many gyms, we will actually get rid of their corporate income tax for 2 full years to give them a chance to catch up, catch their breath, maybe deal with some of the debt that they have hanging over their heads and stay afloat so they can keep growing. That's one example of how we are favoring small businesses in particular. Doug Ford's abandoned them from day one. Talks a good game, but favors the giant corporations and big box retail instead of the mom and pop shops. It's got to stop.
If the choice was truly theirs, then would you just allow businesses, if the choice was truly theirs, as your platform slogan seems to be, then would you just allow restaurants and gyms to stay open despite any sort of provincial mandate going forward?
Well, first of all, we all hope that there will be no future mandates, because as a people, we've worked so hard to get to this spot. Nobody wants to go backwards. But I've said this all the way through the pandemic. I'd be guided by the science. I'd make responsible decisions, probably some tougher decisions earlier on, but I would make sure that we didn't just say financial help would be there. We'd actually deliver it. Doug Ford never really delivered it.
Mr. Delaware,
Thanks so much.
Really quick.
Last one.
You pledged to add the COVID-19 vaccine to the list of scheduled vaccines for school children.
Yes.
The Chief Medical Officer of Ontario, Dr. Kira Moore, has stated that there needs to be more study, that it needs to be looked into more. With that being said, what's the basis for your decision to add this to the list of scheduled vaccinations?
So let's remember that NACI has actually said that kids between the age of 5 and 11, they are strongly urging those kids, like our younger daughter, to get the vaccine. We think it's important because the numbers are still as low as they are. Roughly 40 to 45% of those kids have gotten both doses. We think it's a way to boost confidence and make sure people understand we want our schools to stay open. We want our kids to be healthy at all times. And frankly, the science is settled. We know that the vaccines work. We know that they keep all of us healthy, not just our kids, but their parents, their grandparents, and frontline education workers.
Thank you for being here tonight. There is a Canadian entrepreneur who has a patent pending on an inexpensive and effective retrofit to utilize on existing vehicles using ammonia fuel. As an environmental party, why haven't you investigated this cheap and safe alternative fuel?
Yeah, I think I know the entrepreneur you're talking about. I've met with him on more than one occasion, and certainly we've talked about the importance and viability of not only ammonia, but also green hydrogen are two effective technologies that Ontario should be a global leader in, especially as we look at the EU and just this horrific, senseless invasion, Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and how it's disrupted international energy markets. And Ontario is well positioned to supply the European Union both with green hydrogen and ammonia. And those are technologies that we should be developing because they're huge job and prosperity opportunities for the province.
You plan to address the housing crisis by building 100,000 new affordable units. So how does this help people trying to buy into the housing market with the record level inflation that we're seeing?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, the Ontario Greens put forward a very comprehensive housing affordability strategy last June that some have called a masterclass plan in delivering the solutions we need. It clamps down on rampant speculation in the housing market because we believe homes should be for people, not speculators. And so putting first-time home buyers on a level playing field, especially if you look at the number of corporations and speculative real estate investment entities that they're having to compete against. Secondly, we're the first party that called for removing exclusionary zoning rules that prevent people from rapidly increasing housing supply and providing more choice through duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, making it easier for people to build laneway housing, tiny homes, secondary suites. We think that's the fastest pathway to building the 1.5 million homes that I know all parties have endorsed, but we actually have policy to back it up.
You spoke a lot about farmers and preserving farmland, and yet farmers hate the carbon tax. How do you reconcile that?
Yeah, well, first of all, rebating our carbon fee and dividend rebates and recycles those revenues back to individuals. So most individuals, including farmers, actually will end up with more money in their pocket. And also we've created a fund that will help farmers reduce their fossil fuel use, helping them save money in a variety of ways. Here's the bottom line is, we are losing 175 acres of farmland in Ontario each and every day, 5 family farms a week. It is completely unsustainable to continue to lose the land that feeds us. I think the disruption we're seeing in international food supply chains right now, the disruptions we saw in all supply chains, but also food supply chains during the pandemic, highlights the fact that we have to prioritize our own food security, and that means protecting the land that feeds us. And we know that we can address the housing affordability crisis without paving over that land that feeds us.
6 out of 10 folks in this province don't want to see Doug Ford with another term because his cuts, his chaos.
Ms. Horwath, would you take a few more questions from media in the hall?
I don't think so.
No? Why is that?
Oh, just a few more media questions.
Sorry.
All about that transparency.
We were building the Ontario line, and I just want to quote Ontario line, vast majority of the ridings, they aren't our ridings, but it doesn't matter. I want to get people out of the car. We're building the Eglinton West, and we're building the Yonge extension all the way up to Markham and Mayor Scarbitti. Thank you.
Mr. Ford, do you know that Kieran Moore has financial ties with Pfizer and he sits on one of their advisory boards?
Sorry, we're going. Thanks.
Mr. Ford, were you aware of that when you appointed Kieran Moore? Would you have appointed Kieran Moore if you knew that he was direct ties with Pfizer?
Guys, he's done taking questions.
Mr. Ford, why'd you flip-flop on the vaccine?
questions.
Why'd you flip-flop on the vaccine passport?
Well, that was a wrap from the final formal Ontario Leaders Debate. As you heard, Lincoln Jay and I were able to point 6 answered questions to Schreiner and Del Duca, and at least 4 to Horwath and Ford, who were not available to answer questions for longer than that allotted 15-minute period from us, the non-consortium media. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. Unlike the mainstream media, Rebel News doesn't take a penny from the government, which means that we are 100% viewer funded. If you like the coverage that Lincoln and I brought to you on the Leaders Debate, then please continue to support our coverage by donating at realreporters.ca. There, you can also see all of our politically relevant reports to stay up to date. That's realreporters.ca.